Hello Internet. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a machine that, well, I honestly think it's better if I show you, so let me get this set up here. Making concrete can be kind of a pain in this game because you have to expose all the concrete mix to water, and I've designed a machine that will turn your mix into concrete and automatically stack it up to, I guess, however big you want the stack, as long as it's, limited to 12 by 12. But this machine I have here can stack, I think, around 64 pieces of concrete in multiple layers, so that you can make your concrete more quickly and effectively if you're doing a big build that requires a lot of decorative blocks like that. This machine actually has more redstone than you'd expect, so let me get into that and show you how it works. Alright, so here we are in creative mode. For this build you're going to need a lot of items, including pistons. Obviously you're going to need a sticky piston, some kind of general block to build with, of course redstone dust, redstone repeater, and for this you're going to need a redstone comparator and an observer. And we can grab some new blocks as we need them. Let's go ahead and start off here. So first you want to make an area for the concrete to come out initially that needs to be up to 12 blocks long. I would suggest making it exactly 12 so you don't have to deal with any of the things associated with pistons trying to push your other blocks. That can be a pain. So that should be 12, and then your piston is going to be here on the 13th block. You then want a piece of redstone leading to the piston, and you're going to set down your comparator. And we're going to actually be using this to compare a signal here, which will make sure that your machine only works and only makes the somewhat obnoxious piston noise when you're actually trying to make concrete. So if you lay out your redstone exactly as I do, you're going to have a redstone torch here, putting a strong signal out onto the side of this converter so that it normally stays off. And you are going to have the redstone leading to any kind of a, let's say in this case we'll just use a pressure plate because that's what I showed you earlier in my example. You are then going to want to get an observer set up. Make sure that it is watching this piece of redstone so that when it updates, i.e. from getting a signal, the observer can send out another redstone signal this way. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is give ourselves a few blocks of redstone dust here leading out from our comparator, and then you want 3 repeaters here. This is going to set up a redstone clock so that our piston will continually push out, as you saw, as the concrete powder falls down. And the reason that we're using repeaters here instead of an observer is because the observer would actually click too quickly and it would not be effective for the repeater here. So we're setting up a fairly standard clock with one exception. We want a sticky piston with a block here that is connected to our initial redstone torch so that we can actually break our clock when we're not using it, thus allowing us to not have this clock running in the background and not run the risk of having the clock break when we reload our world, which is not often but sometimes happens. So we have redstone leading here, and as we see when we're standing on the pressure plate, the sticky piston pulls back and allows the circuit to operate. That's exactly what we want. Now let's look at how we actually need to power the circuit, which will be through our observer. We're just going to have redstone, let's not get that tangled. We're going to have redstone coming back out into the redstone clock here. Let's go ahead and test this. Alright, something went wrong, maybe too much redstone. Yes, it was too long. So you can go ahead and add a repeater here if you're following my instructions exactly. If not, you may not need the repeater. But now we see we have a reasonably paced clock going on here that is in fact cut off when we get off the pressure plate, and that's exactly what we wanted. So that's the main part of our project here done. Now we want to go ahead and set up the pistons that will be not breaking, but pushing and organizing our blocks. So we're going to come over here, set up pistons for as many rows as we want. I would suggest a maximum of 5, as you will have to mine all this stuff and it's very inconvenient to have to jump up or build other blocks. But let me just use 4 pistons for this example here. We will then have, of course, repeaters set up here to effectively power all of these things. This wiring gets a little bulky here, unfortunately, and I don't know if there is a way to power a vertical row of pistons more easily than this. If there is, feel free to use that. I'm just going to use this for the purpose of my example. So this should hook our other pistons up to our clock here. As you can see, I've made a slight error, which is corrected now as the redstone is linked to all the pistons. And we see that our pistons are in fact pushing exactly how we need them to be. So there's one more component that we need here. We need a piston to actually push the blocks up. This should be here, actually. To push the blocks up so that they can be nudged into the rows that they'll be in. And this again is fairly simple to hook up. I will be moving our repeater back 1 block here just to facilitate this. And from there, we have this other block set up on our clock, and we should be able to see it raising and lowering from here. Alright, and if you notice, it pushes up kind of quickly. So let's try and slow our other pistons by several ticks so that there is not interference when we're trying to push blocks up. And you may have to mess around with this a little bit to get the right balance, but you should see them essentially alternating. There we go, it goes 1, 2, 1, 2. That's a bit more like what we want, and we may have to mess with the timing here as we test it out, but we'll get there when we need to. What you then want to do is set up a source of water. So go ahead and get a water bucket, and you want to set the water bucket down 8 blocks away from this position right here. So if we count, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the water flows right onto here, which will be what's converting our powder into concrete. And of course you would need some kind of backing here in order to set down the concrete powder, and I will now actually find that for you so that I can demonstrate the machine, prove that it works alright. Sure, there we go. And I will move our pressure plate a little bit closer, like I had in my example, so that we can be in range to try it out. So we stand here, we see we got our whole clock going. So this lets us start setting down concrete blocks. So we're now testing our machine, loading in the concrete powder here, and we can see that it is in fact stacking them exactly how we wanted, and this will allow us to simply harvest all of the concrete at once instead of making several trips. I should note that you will need some obsidian actually, because we know that it is not pushed by pistons. So the purpose of the obsidian is you will need 1 block here to keep pistons from just pushing the concrete higher than we can mine it. And you will also need, as you can see, a row, 1 block away from where you load in the powder so that the concrete does not try and push into your redstone, because that would be a problem, obviously. That would kind of ruin the machine. So we use this obsidian because it is unpushable, and this allows us to load in a lot of concrete at once and just harvest it all at the end once this is filled, instead of making several trips and having a generally unpleasant experience. And we can see when we step off, the machine freezes. We can harvest the concrete however we like, and the machine is fairly easy to maintain. It should work every time. You just harvest out the concrete, load in more concrete powder, and there you go. You can set up a system if you want to stack this concrete up very high, and that negates the need for standing here and loading it as the machine operates. It's really up to your preference as a user. Both work, as I've demonstrated. And that is the machine. You may want to fiddle with the wiring and the position of the water, etc. to try and make this prettier. Like I showed you at the beginning of the video, I was successfully able to hide all of the wiring and the ugly things. You may want to mess around with this, see whatever fits your needs best. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this tutorial has been helpful.